The morning rain hammered against the windows of Fort Braxton's main administrative building as Master Sergeant Jake Morrison watched the civilian contractor walk through the security checkpoint for what he assumed would be the last time. She moved with an odd confidence that seemed out of place for someone who had just been terminated from her position as a logistics coordinator. 3 months of complaints from various departments had finally reached Colonel Harrison's desk, and the decision had been swift and final. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow, I've saved something extra special for you. Sarah Chen didn't belong here, they said. She was soft, inexperienced, and worst of all, she was civilian trash trying to play soldier in a world she couldn't possibly understand. The woman had been assigned to coordinate supply chains between multiple military installations, but her methods were unconventional, her questions too probing, and her presence somehow unsettling to career military personnel who had spent decades climbing the ranks. Morrison had been among her harshest critics. During staff meetings, he'd watched her challenge established protocols with suggestions that seemed to come from someone who understood operational security better than any contractor should. When she questioned why certain supply routes took longer than necessary, or why specific equipment requisitions were being delayed, Morrison had dismissed her concerns as civilian naivete. Someone who had never worn the uniform, never faced enemy fire, never understood the weight of responsibility that came with protecting national security, had no business questioning how things were done. The woman's personnel file was thin, almost suspiciously so. Sarah Chen, age 32, former corporate logistics manager, security clearance approved through standard civilian contractor channels. No military service, no combat experience, no reason to believe she understood anything beyond spreadsheets and delivery schedules. Her background check had come back clean, but something about her always felt incomplete, like there were pieces missing from her story that nobody bothered to investigate. Sarah Chen stood in Colonel Harrison's office, her hands clasped behind her back in a posture that was almost military, despite her civilian clothes. The termination meeting had lasted exactly 14 minutes, long enough for Harrison to cite performance issues, personality conflicts, and the unanimous recommendation from department heads that her contract not be renewed. She had listened without interruption, her dark eyes focused on something beyond the colonel's shoulder, as if she was calculating distances or analyzing sight lines through the window behind his desk. Morrison sat in the corner of the office, officially present as the senior NCO responsible for contractor oversight, but really there to witness what he considered long overdue justice. For 3 months, Sarah Chen had been a thorn in his side, questioning procedures that had worked perfectly well for years, suggesting improvements that nobody had asked for, and somehow managing to complete her assignments with an efficiency that made everyone else look incompetent by comparison. The woman's methods were wrong, Morrison told himself. She worked too independently, kept irregular hours, and had an annoying habit of knowing things about military operations that weren't included in her briefings. When supply convoys were delayed due to route security concerns, she somehow anticipated the problems before official notifications were sent. When equipment shipments went missing, she could predict which alternate suppliers would have replacement items in stock. Her success rate was unsettling because it suggested she had access to information that should have been classified above her pay grade. Colonel Harrison finished his prepared remarks about contract termination and budget constraints, but Sarah's response was not what anyone expected. Instead of arguing or pleading for reconsideration, she simply nodded once and asked a single question that made Morrison's blood run cold. "Colonel, are you familiar with Operation Nightfall?" Harrison's face went pale. Morrison felt something twist in his stomach because Operation Nightfall was classified so far above his security clearance that he wasn't even supposed to know the name existed. It was the kind of black operation that appeared in heavily redacted intelligence reports, the type of mission that officially never happened but unofficially kept people awake at night, wondering what horrors were being prevented by forces they couldn't acknowledge. "Ms. Chen," Harrison said carefully, "I'm not sure what you think you know about classified operations, but your clearance level doesn't extend to 17 hostages," Sarah interrupted, her voice carrying an edge that hadn't been there during the termination discussion. 43 enemy combatants neutralized, 0 friendly casualties. Mission duration, 6 hours and 27 minutes. Primary extraction point compromised at 0347 hours. Secondary extraction successful at 0614 hours. The room fell into absolute silence. Morrison watched Colonel Harrison's hands shake slightly as he reached for his secure phone, then stop halfway, as if he suddenly wasn't sure who he should call or what he should report. The details Sarah had just recited were not the kind of information that appeared in civilian contractor briefings or standard intelligence summaries. They were the kind of specifics that only appeared in after-action reports written by people who had been present during the operation. Morrison's mind raced through possibilities, each more disturbing than the last. Either Sarah Chen was some kind of intelligence asset operating under civilian cover, or she had access to classified information through channels that represented a massive security breach, or she was claiming personal knowledge of operations that would make her termination a catastrophic mistake. "Ms. Chen," Colonel Harrison said slowly, "where exactly did you serve before taking this contractor position?" Sarah's expression didn't change, but something in her posture shifted almost imperceptibly. Morrison noticed that her weight distribution had moved to the balls of her feet, as if she was unconsciously preparing for rapid movement. Her hands remained clasped behind her back, but her shoulders had squared in a way that suggested military training so deeply ingrained it had become automatic. "I didn't serve anywhere that appears in official records, Colonel, but I've been serving longer than most people in this building have been alive." Morrison felt his world tilt sideways. The woman standing before them wasn't just claiming military experience. She was claiming experience in operations so classified that admitting knowledge of them should have triggered immediate security protocols. Yet something about her calm confidence suggested she wasn't bluffing or making desperate claims to save her job. She was stating facts with the matter-of-fact precision of someone reading from an official report. Colonel Harrison reached for his desk phone, then hesitated again. If Sarah Chen was telling the truth about Operation Nightfall, then her presence at Fort Braxton wasn't coincidental, and her termination might be the kind of mistake that ended careers and triggered congressional investigations. But if she was lying or delusional, then they were dealing with a security breach that required immediate containment. "Prove it," Morrison said quietly, his voice cutting through the tension. "If you're claiming knowledge of classified operations, prove you have legitimate access to that information." Sarah turned to look at him directly for the first time since entering the office. Her eyes held depths that seemed inconsistent with her official age of 32, as if she had seen things that aged people in ways that calendars couldn't measure. When she spoke, her voice carried the kind of quiet authority that came from years of making life-and-death decisions under impossible circumstances. "Master Sergeant Morrison, your service record shows 3 tours in Afghanistan, 2 in Iraq, and a Bronze Star for actions during the Battle of Marja. You've been married to Rebecca Morrison for 8 years. You have 2 children, named Michael and Sarah, and you drive a 2018 Ford F-150 with North Carolina plates. Your mortgage payment is $743 per month, you owe $12,000 in credit card debt, and you send $300 every month to your mother in Tennessee because your father's medical bills exceeded their insurance coverage." Morrison felt the blood drain from his face. The personal details Sarah had just recited weren't classified military information, but they weren't the kind of facts that civilian contractors should know about senior NCOs they had minimal contact with. Someone had conducted a thorough background investigation on him, the type of deep dive that required resources and authorization levels far beyond what any logistics coordinator should possess. Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now, back to the story. "That information isn't classified," Morrison said, though his voice lacked conviction. "Anyone with basic research skills could find those details." Sarah's expression remained neutral, but something that might have been amusement flickered in her eyes. "Master Sergeant, your wife Rebecca doesn't know about the nightmares you still have about Corporal Williams. She doesn't know that you wake up at exactly 0347 hours every Tuesday morning, because that's when Williams stepped on the IED that took his legs. She doesn't know that you keep his Purple Heart citation in your wallet, or that you visit his grave in Arlington National Cemetery every year on the anniversary of the explosion." The room went completely silent. Morrison felt something break open in his chest, because those details weren't in any official record or background check. They were the kind of personal demons that combat veterans carried in silence, the memories that shaped their nights and haunted their dreams. Only someone with intimate knowledge of his military service, someone who had access to information that existed in the spaces between official reports and classified debriefings, could know those specifics. Colonel Harrison stood up slowly, his face pale with understanding. Ms. Chen, I think this conversation needs to continue in a secure conference room with personnel who have appropriate clearance levels. Colonel, Sarah replied, I don't think this base has personnel with appropriate clearance levels for the conversation we need to have. Morrison watched the exchange with growing unease. Sarah Chen wasn't just claiming military experience. She was suggesting that her actual background was classified beyond the security protocols of a major military installation. The implications were staggering, because it meant she had been operating under civilian cover, while possessing knowledge and authority that exceeded most of the officers on base. What exactly are you saying, Miss Chen? Harrison asked. Sarah reached into her jacket pocket and produced a small leather wallet that looked worn from years of use. She opened it to reveal identification that made Morrison's knees buckle. The card was black with silver lettering, bearing seals and authorization codes that belonged to divisions of the military that officially didn't exist. I'm saying that Sarah Chen, the civilian contractor, was a cover identity, Colonel. My actual designation is Major Elena Vasquez, Delta Force, Special Activities Division. I've been operating under deep cover for the past 18 months to investigate security vulnerabilities at installations that process classified logistics for overseas operations. The room spun around Morrison as pieces of an impossible puzzle fell into place. Sarah's unconventional methods weren't civilian inexperience. They were the refined techniques of someone trained in special operations. Her probing questions about supply routes weren't naive curiosity. They were professional assessments conducted by someone whose job was to identify weaknesses in military logistics chains. Her efficiency wasn't luck. It was the result of training and experience that few people possessed. Colonel Harrison reached for his secure phone again, this time with hands that shook from shock rather than uncertainty. Major Vasquez, if what you're claiming is true, then this entire situation represents a massive failure of communication between departments. Colonel, Elena replied. Communication failures were part of the test. My mission was to determine how long I could operate under civilian cover before anyone questioned my background thoroughly enough to discover my actual identity. The answer is 18 months, which represents a significant security vulnerability. Morrison felt sick. For 3 months, he had been dismissing and undermining someone whose military credentials exceeded his own. Someone who had been conducting classified assessments of their operational security, while he treated her like an incompetent civilian. The woman he had called civilian trash was a special forces officer whose training and experience made his Bronze Star look like a participation trophy. Major, Morrison said quietly, I owe you an apology. Elena looked at him with eyes that held no anger, just professional assessment. Master Sergeant, you responded exactly as expected to someone you perceived as a security risk. Your reaction was within normal parameters for the test scenario. Test scenario? The entire situation was designed to evaluate how military personnel respond to civilians who demonstrate knowledge or capabilities that seem inconsistent with their official credentials. Your dismissive attitude toward me wasn't personal. It was data. Morrison realized that his treatment of Sarah Chen had been part of an elaborate security assessment, and his failure to investigate her background more thoroughly represented the kind of vulnerability that enemy intelligence services could exploit. Someone with Elena's skills could have spent years gathering classified information while everyone around her assumed she was just another civilian contractor. Colonel Harrison ended his secure phone call and turned back to Elena with an expression that mixed relief with professional embarrassment. Major Vasquez, I've been instructed to provide you with whatever support you need to complete your assessment. I'm also required to ask why you revealed your identity now instead of continuing the cover operation. Elena's expression grew serious in a way that made Morrison's chest tighten with anticipation. Because the assessment phase is complete, Colonel, now comes the real reason I was assigned to Fort Braxton. Which is? Elena walked to the window and looked out at the base's main logistics area, where supply trucks moved in carefully choreographed patterns between warehouses and loading docks. When she spoke, her voice carried the weight of someone delivering information that would change everything. Colonel, Fort Braxton has been compromised. For the past 6 months, classified equipment and supplies have been diverted to unauthorized recipients through a network of personnel who believe they're supporting legitimate black operations. The people involved think they're heroes supporting missions that save lives. They have no idea they're actually supplying enemy forces with American military equipment. Morrison felt the room spin around him. Elena wasn't just a special forces officer conducting security assessments. She was an intelligence operative who had discovered a massive breach in their operational security. The supply chain irregularities she had been questioning weren't inefficiencies. They were evidence of systematic theft or sabotage. "Major," Harrison said slowly, "are you telling us that people on this base are unknowingly committing treason?" "I'm telling you that someone has created a sophisticated deception operation that convinces military personnel to violate security protocols while believing they're supporting classified missions that require off-the-books logistics. The people involved think they're protecting national security. They're actually undermining it." Elena turned back to face them, and Morrison saw something in her expression that made his blood run cold. This wasn't just about discovering security vulnerabilities or catching people who had been careless with classified information. This was about unraveling a conspiracy that reached into the heart of their military logistics operations. "Colonel," Elena continued, "my termination today was supposed to be the end of my cover operation. Tomorrow, I'm scheduled to begin the next phase of the mission, identifying and stopping the people responsible for compromising Fort Braxton's security." Morrison realized that Sarah Chen's dismissal hadn't been the end of anything. It had been the beginning of an investigation that would determine whether the people he worked with every day were heroes, traitors, or unwitting pawns in a game they didn't understand. And Elena Vasquez, the woman they had dismissed as civilian trash, was about to tear apart everything they thought they knew about their own base. The storm outside intensified, rain lashing against the windows with increasing fury, as if nature itself was responding to the revelation that nothing at Fort Braxton was what it seemed. Morrison looked at Elena with new understanding, recognizing that her calm confidence wasn't arrogance. It was the steady professionalism of someone who had been trained to handle situations that would break most people. "Major Vasquez," Morrison said, "what do you need from us?" Elena's response would determine whether they became part of the solution or obstacles to be removed. And for the first time since entering Colonel Harrison's office, Morrison realized that their careers, their reputations, and possibly their lives depended on how they answered that question. "I need you to trust me," Elena said simply. "And I need you to understand that everything you think you know about this base is about to change." As Morrison looked into Elena's eyes, he saw the kind of determination that had carried her through operations like Nightfall, missions that officially never happened but kept the world safer than most people would ever know. The woman they had dismissed as civilian trash was about to prove that some underestimations carried consequences that echoed far beyond hurt feelings or damaged careers. The real mission was just beginning, and Master Sergeant Jake Morrison was about to learn that some secrets were buried so deep that uncovering them required someone willing to disappear completely, only to emerge when the truth could no longer be hidden. Elena Vasquez had spent 18 months becoming Sarah Chen, and now it was time to discover what other identities and deceptions were hiding in the shadows of Fort Braxton. The secure conference room in Building 7 felt different at 02:00 hours, when the fluorescent lights cast harsh shadows across maps and classified documents that covered every available surface. Elena Vasquez sat at the head of the table, no longer wearing the conservative business attire of Sarah Chen, the civilian contractor. Instead, she was dressed in tactical gear that looked like it had seen serious use, with equipment harnesses that bore the subtle wear patterns of someone who had operated in hostile territories where mistakes meant death. Morrison found himself studying Elena's transformation with a mixture of professional respect and personal embarrassment. The woman who had been dismissed as incompetent civilian trash 12 hours earlier was now briefing them on security breaches that threatened national security. Her voice carried the kind of quiet authority that came from years of making decisions under extreme pressure, and her knowledge of Fort Braxton's operations was comprehensive in ways that made Morrison realize how thoroughly they had been deceived. Colonel Harrison had spent the past 6 hours making secure phone calls to Washington, verifying Elena's credentials and receiving authorization for operations that exceeded his normal command authority. The responses had been swift and unambiguous. Major Elena Vasquez was legitimate, her mission was critical, and any personnel who interfered with her investigation would face consequences that ended careers and resulted in federal prosecution. Captain Lisa Rodriguez, the base intelligence officer, spread additional classified documents across the table as Elena continued her briefing. The evidence was damning in its scope and sophistication. For 18 months, someone had been systematically diverting military supplies through a network of forged requisitions, falsified authorization codes, and personnel who believed they were supporting legitimate black operations. Elena pointed to a series of supply manifests that showed equipment being shipped to coordinates that didn't match any official military installations. Night vision devices, encrypted communication equipment, body armor, weapons, and ammunition had been disappearing from Fort Braxton's inventory at rates that should have triggered immediate investigation. Instead, the thefts had been disguised as routine transfers to classified operations that existed only on paper. The sophistication of the deception was breathtaking. Someone had created false mission authorizations that referenced real classified programs, using authentic-looking paperwork that would pass casual inspection by personnel who didn't have access to verify the operations independently. The forged documents included proper security classifications, legitimate-looking authorization signatures, and routing codes that appeared to match established protocols for black operations. Morrison examined the evidence with growing unease, recognizing that the people involved in the diversion scheme weren't necessarily criminals or traitors. They were dedicated military personnel who had been manipulated into violating security protocols while believing they were supporting missions that protected American lives. The psychological manipulation was as impressive as the logistical execution, turning good soldiers into unwitting accomplices through carefully crafted deceptions. Sergeant First Class David Kim, the base's senior logistics coordinator, had been brought into the briefing despite his obvious discomfort with the security implications. His department had processed many of the suspect requisitions, and his signature appeared on shipping manifests for equipment that had disappeared into unauthorized channels. Kim's hands shook as he reviewed documents that showed his unwitting participation in what appeared to be systematic theft of military resources. Elena's investigation had revealed that the network extended far beyond Fort Braxton, involving personnel at multiple military installations who were processing similar diversions through their own supply chains. The scope suggested an organized effort with significant resources and insider knowledge of military logistics protocols. Someone with access to classified information was coordinating a massive theft operation while making it appear routine and legitimate. Captain Rodriguez pulled up digital surveillance footage on her laptop, showing loading dock activities during hours when most personnel were off duty. The video revealed systematic patterns of unauthorized access, with individuals using valid security credentials to remove equipment from warehouses during times when their presence wouldn't be questioned. The people involved moved with purpose and confidence, suggesting they believed their activities were authorized and necessary. Elena highlighted specific frames that showed personnel loading unmarked vehicles with equipment that matched items missing from inventory manifests. The vehicles bore no military markings or license plates that could be traced through official channels, but their loading patterns suggested professional logistics experience. Someone was coordinating these operations with military precision, ensuring that stolen equipment reached its destination without triggering security alerts. Morrison studied the surveillance footage with professional interest, noting that the people involved demonstrated knowledge of base security protocols that suggested insider information. They knew which cameras had blind spots, which entrances were monitored during specific shifts, and which personnel had access to restricted areas during off-duty hours. The operations were too sophisticated to be the work of random criminals or opportunistic thieves. The financial investigation was equally disturbing. Elena had traced payment records that showed some personnel receiving deposits into personal bank accounts that coincided with equipment diversions. The amounts were significant but not so large as to trigger automatic banking alerts, suggesting careful planning by people who understood financial monitoring systems. The money trail led to accounts that appeared legitimate on the surface but were actually fronts for organizations that didn't officially exist. Colonel Harrison examined the evidence with the expression of someone watching his career disintegrate in real time. The security breaches had occurred under his command, involving personnel he trusted and protocols he had approved. The investigation would determine whether he was negligent, incompetent, or actively involved in the conspiracy. His future depended on cooperating fully with Elena's mission, while hoping that his ignorance of the scheme would protect him from criminal prosecution. Elena's briefing continued with details that made Morrison's stomach churn. The stolen equipment wasn't being sold on black markets or stockpiled by criminal organizations. Instead, it was being delivered to enemy forces in active conflict zones, providing sophisticated American military technology to people who were using it against American troops and allied forces. The diversions weren't just theft. They were acts of indirect warfare that put soldiers' lives at risk. The intelligence showed that American night vision equipment had been recovered from enemy casualties in Afghanistan. Encrypted communication devices were being used to coordinate attacks against NATO forces, and body armor bearing U.S. military specifications was protecting insurgents during firefights with American troops. The people responsible for the diversions were unknowingly contributing to the deaths of their own comrades through carefully orchestrated deceptions. Captain Rodriguez presented intercepts of enemy communications that referenced American equipment deliveries, using terminology that suggested regular and reliable supply chains. The enemy forces weren't just receiving occasional windfalls of captured equipment. They were counting on consistent access to American military technology through established networks. Someone was providing them with logistic support that rivaled official military supply operations. Elena revealed that her 18-month investigation had identified the operational structure behind the diversions, but not the ultimate leadership. The network operated through compartmentalized cells, with each group knowing only their specific role in the larger operation. Personnel involved in processing false requisitions didn't communicate with those handling physical transfers, and financial coordinators had no direct contact with logistics personnel. The isolation prevented any single individual from understanding the full scope of the conspiracy. The psychological profiles were particularly disturbing. Elena had identified recruitment patterns that targeted military personnel who were experiencing financial difficulties, family problems, or career frustrations. The recruiters approached vulnerable individuals with offers to participate in classified operations that would provide additional income while serving important national security objectives. The victims believed they were being selected for elite assignments that recognized their exceptional capabilities and dedication. Morrison recognized the recruitment strategy as sophisticated psychological manipulation, designed to exploit the natural desire of military personnel to contribute to important missions. The conspirators weren't forcing people to participate through threats or coercion. They were convincing dedicated soldiers that cooperation was patriotic and necessary. The victims felt honored to be included in operations they believed were protecting American interests. Sergeant Kim's involvement had followed the typical pattern. 6 months earlier, he had been approached by someone claiming to represent a classified Pentagon task force that required discreet logistics support for operations in denied areas. The recruiter had provided authentic-looking credentials and authorization documents, explaining that the mission involved supplying American Special Forces units operating behind enemy lines without official acknowledgement. The story was compelling because it matched Kim's understanding of how black operations functioned. Special Forces units often operated under cover that required supply chains independent of normal military logistics. Kim had been told that his participation was voluntary but critical, and that his discretion was essential for the safety of American personnel operating in hostile territories. He had felt honored to be trusted with such important responsibilities. Elena's investigation had revealed similar recruitment approaches throughout the network, with each victim being told variations of the same story about supporting classified operations that protected American lives. The conspirators had studied military culture thoroughly, understanding exactly which appeals would motivate good soldiers to violate protocols they had sworn to uphold. The psychological manipulation was as sophisticated as the operational execution. The evidence suggested that the network had been operating for at least 3 years, systematically expanding its reach across multiple military installations while refining its deception techniques. The conspirators had learned from early mistakes, improving their forged documents, recruitment methods, and operational security with each iteration. They were professionals who understood both military logistics and intelligence operations. Captain Rodriguez presented communications intercepts that showed the network coordinating activities across installations in different states, suggesting a command structure that operated at levels above individual base commanders. Someone with significant authority and resources was directing operations that required coordination between multiple military facilities and civilian contractors. The scope indicated involvement by people with access to classified information at very high levels. Elena's briefing revealed that Fort Braxton was just one node in a much larger network that extended internationally. with similar operations identified at Allied military installations in Europe and Asia. The conspirators weren't just targeting American military resources, they were systematically compromising the logistics capabilities of the entire Western alliance. The implications for international security were staggering. Morrison found himself questioning everything he thought he knew about military security protocols and personnel reliability. The people involved in the diversions weren't career criminals or foreign agents. They were dedicated military personnel who had been deceived into believing they were supporting legitimate operations. The conspiracy had turned good soldiers into unwitting traitors through carefully crafted psychological manipulation. The investigation had reached a critical juncture where further progress required identifying the network's leadership structure. Elena's cover operation as Sarah Chen had been designed to establish credibility within Fort Braxton's logistics operations, allowing her to identify personnel who might be approached for recruitment or who were already involved in suspicious activities. Her termination had been planned to trigger the next phase of the investigation. Colonel Harrison realized that his base had become the focal point for an operation that would determine whether the network could be dismantled or would continue expanding its reach throughout the military logistics system. The success or failure of Elena's mission would affect military operations worldwide, determining whether American forces would continue facing enemies equipped with their own technology. Elena explained that the next phase would require active deception operations designed to identify the network's leadership by providing false information that would trigger responses revealing the command structure. The plan was dangerous because it required temporarily increasing the flow of equipment to enemy forces while gathering intelligence that could expose the entire conspiracy. The risks were enormous, but the potential gains justified the approach. Morrison understood that he was being recruited to participate in operations that existed in the gray areas between legal and illegal, authorized and unsanctioned. Elena needed personnel who could maintain operational security while executing deception plans that would violate normal military protocols. The mission required people willing to risk their careers and possibly their lives to stop a conspiracy that threatened national security. The briefing concluded with Elena assigning specific roles to each attendee, transforming them from unwitting victims or potential obstacles into active participants in a counterintelligence operation. Morrison found himself responsible for identifying logistics personnel who might be vulnerable to recruitment, while Captain Rodriguez would monitor communications for patterns that revealed network activities. Sergeant Kim would continue processing suspect requisitions while providing intelligence about recruitment approaches. As the meeting ended, Morrison realized that Elena Vasquez had transformed their understanding of everything happening at Fort Braxton. The woman they had dismissed as civilian trash was conducting operations that would determine whether American military technology continued flowing to enemy forces, or whether the network responsible could be identified and neutralized. The real mission was just beginning, and their success would be measured not in completed assignments or efficiency ratings, but in lives saved and security restored. Elena's final instructions were delivered with the calm professionalism of someone who had spent years conducting operations where failure meant death. Each participant would maintain their normal duties while secretly gathering intelligence that would expose the network's structure and leadership. They would operate undercover within their own base, pretending normalcy while conducting surveillance of colleagues who might be traitors or victims. The transformation was complete. Sarah Chen, the civilian contractor, had disappeared permanently, replaced by Major Elena Vasquez, whose mission extended far beyond investigating security vulnerabilities. She was hunting the people responsible for turning American military logistics into a supply chain for enemy forces, and everyone in the room had become either allies or targets in an operation that would determine the future of military security. Morrison left the briefing room understanding that his career, his reputation, and possibly his life now depended on successfully executing operations that he couldn't discuss with anyone, including his family. The woman he had dismissed as incompetent civilian trash had recruited him into a mission that required him to spy on his own colleagues while maintaining the pretense that nothing had changed. As dawn broke over Fort Braxton, Morrison realized that Elena Vasquez represented something more dangerous than he had initially understood. She wasn't just a special forces officer investigating security breaches. She was a professional operative who had spent 18 months studying their weaknesses and preparing to exploit them in pursuit of objectives that transcended normal military operations. The real question wasn't whether she could succeed in her mission, but whether the people around her would survive the consequences of helping her try. The operation commenced at precisely 0630 hours on a Tuesday morning that looked identical to every other Tuesday morning at Fort Braxton, except that everything had changed in ways that only 5 people understood. Elena Vasquez moved through the base with the same purposeful stride she had used as Sarah Chen, but now her civilian contractor badge had been replaced with temporary identification that granted her access to areas that had been forbidden territory just days earlier. Morrison watched from the logistics office as Elena conducted what appeared to be routine inspections of warehouse facilities, but he knew she was actually implementing the first phase of a counterintelligence operation designed to flush out the network's leadership. Her movements were calculated to trigger responses from people who were monitoring base activities for signs of investigation or disruption to their carefully orchestrated theft operations. The bait was elegant in its simplicity. Elena had arranged for specific pieces of high-value equipment to be processed through requisition channels with false authorization codes that would appeal to the network's recruitment criteria. The equipment included advanced night vision systems, encrypted communication devices, and tactical gear that enemy forces would find particularly valuable. Anyone monitoring Fort Braxton's logistics for diversion opportunities would find the offerings irresistible. Captain Rodriguez coordinated surveillance from the base communications center, monitoring digital traffic and electronic signatures that might reveal how the network communicated internally. Her equipment was calibrated to detect encrypted transmissions, unusual data transfers, and communication patterns that deviated from normal military protocols. The goal was to identify the channels through which recruitment approaches were coordinated and operational instructions were distributed. Sergeant Kim continued processing requisitions through normal channels while secretly documenting every interaction that seemed suspicious or unusual. His position provided insight into which personnel had access to classified requisition systems, and which individuals demonstrated knowledge of authorization protocols that exceeded their official clearance levels. The information would help identify both victims and perpetrators within the network's operational structure. Elena's strategy required patience and precision because moving too quickly would alert the network to the investigation and cause them to alter their operational security or relocate their activities to other installations. The counterintelligence operation needed to appear routine and coincidental, gathering intelligence through subtle observation rather than direct confrontation. Success depended on the network's leadership making mistakes while believing they remained undetected. The first response came within 18 hours, when Sergeant Martinez from the motor pool approached Kim with an unusual request for vehicle authorization forms that weren't typically required for routine maintenance operations. Martinez claimed to represent a logistics coordination office that Kim had never heard of, requesting access to transportation assets for classified equipment transfers that required discretion and operational security. Kim followed Elena's instructions perfectly, expressing enthusiasm for participating in important classified operations, while secretly recording the conversation and documenting the false authorization codes that Martinez provided. The approach matched the recruitment pattern Elena had described, targeting personnel with access to critical resources while appealing to their desire to contribute to meaningful missions. Morrison observed the interaction from a position that allowed him to witness Martinez's recruitment techniques without appearing to conduct surveillance. The approach was sophisticated, combining appeals to patriotism and professional pride with financial incentives that would be attractive to someone experiencing personal economic difficulties. Martinez demonstrated detailed knowledge of Kim's background and circumstances, suggesting extensive intelligence gathering before the recruitment attempt. The psychological manipulation was textbook perfect, designed to make Kim feel special and important, while gradually compromising his adherence to security protocols. Martinez explained that the operation required personnel who could maintain absolute discretion while supporting missions that officially couldn't be acknowledged. The recruitment pitch emphasized Kim's exceptional capabilities and trustworthiness, making participation seem like recognition of his professional excellence. Elena monitored the recruitment through concealed surveillance equipment that captured audio and video evidence of Martinez's approach. The technology was sophisticated enough to document detailed conversations without being detected by people trained in counter-surveillance techniques. The evidence would be crucial for prosecution purposes and for understanding the network's recruitment methodology. Captain Rodriguez detected encrypted communications originating from Martinez's location within minutes of his approach to Kim, suggesting coordination with external authorities who were monitoring the recruitment attempt in real time. The communications used frequency patterns and encryption protocols that weren't part of standard military systems, indicating access to equipment and techniques that suggested professional intelligence operations. The network's response revealed operational security measures that impressed Elena with their sophistication. Martinez had approached Kim using false credentials that would pass casual verification, backed by authorization codes that appeared authentic when checked through standard validation systems. The deception was comprehensive enough to fool experienced military personnel who weren't specifically trained to identify advanced counterfeiting techniques. Elena's counter-surveillance revealed that Martinez was being monitored by additional personnel who maintained overwatch positions during the recruitment attempt. The security measures indicated that the network understood the risks of exposure and had implemented protective protocols designed to minimize the consequences of discovery. The leadership demonstrated professional intelligence tradecraft that suggested military or agency backgrounds. The investigation expanded rapidly, as Elena's bait operations triggered responses from multiple network participants who had remained hidden during her 18 months of passive observation. Personnel throughout Fort Braxton began demonstrating knowledge of the false requisitions and expressing interest in participating in operations that would provide access to the valuable equipment Elena had made available. Morrison documented approaches from people he had worked with for years, including Staff Sergeant Williams from the communications section and Corporal Thompson from base security. Both individuals used recruitment techniques that matched Martinez's approach, suggesting training and coordination by people who understood psychological manipulation and operational security. The network's reach extended throughout the base's organizational structure. The financial investigation revealed payment structures that involved offshore accounts and cryptocurrency transfers, indicating access to sophisticated money laundering capabilities that required significant resources and expertise. Captain Rodriguez traced digital transactions that connected Fort Braxton personnel to financial networks that spanned multiple countries and involved currencies that were difficult to monitor through traditional banking oversight. Elena's analysis of the network structure revealed a hierarchical organization with clear command and control relationships that operated independently of official military chains of command. The people conducting recruitment approaches reported to supervisors who remained invisible to base personnel, suggesting leadership that operated from positions outside Fort Braxton's direct authority structure. The breakthrough came when Elena's surveillance detected Martinez receiving instructions through a secure communications system that required encryption keys and protocols that weren't available through normal military channels. Captain Rodriguez intercepted fragments of the encrypted communications and identified routing signatures that traced back to servers located in countries that didn't maintain extradition treaties with the United States. Elena realized that the network wasn't just stealing American military equipment. It was operating as a foreign intelligence service that had successfully penetrated multiple U.S. military installations. The sophistication of their operations, the quality of their forged documents, and the effectiveness of their recruitment techniques indicated state-level resources and training. Fort Braxton had been compromised by professional intelligence operatives. The revelation transformed the investigation from a criminal case into a national security emergency that required immediate escalation to federal authorities with jurisdiction over foreign intelligence operations. Elena contacted her supervisors through secure channels that bypassed normal military communication systems, requesting authorization for operations that exceeded her original mission parameters. Morrison found himself at the center of an espionage investigation that threatened to expose foreign penetration of American military logistics at levels that could compromise operations worldwide. The people he had been documenting weren't just criminals or misguided soldiers. They were potentially foreign agents or their recruited assets operating under deep cover within the U.S. military structure. The scope of the investigation expanded to include personnel at installations throughout the United States and allied countries, as Elena's intelligence revealed that Fort Braxton was just one component of an international network that had systematically compromised Western military logistics for at least 5 years. The stolen equipment had been used in conflicts that had resulted in American and Allied casualties. Elena's cover as Sarah Chen had been more sophisticated than anyone realized. Her civilian contractor position had been created through legitimate channels that involved cooperation between multiple government agencies, conducting a coordinated investigation into foreign intelligence penetration of military logistics systems. Her dismissal had been planned to trigger network responses that would reveal operational structures and leadership connections. The counterintelligence operation reached its climax when Elena arranged for a massive equipment transfer. that would force the network's leadership to reveal themselves through direct involvement in what appeared to be their most successful theft operation. The bait included advanced weapon systems and classified technology that would be irresistible to foreign intelligence services seeking to understand American military capabilities. Captain Rodriguez coordinated with federal authorities to monitor all communications and financial transactions associated with the operation, while Morrison and his team maintained surveillance of personnel who might be involved in the theft attempt. The goal was to document the complete operational chain from initial recruitment through final delivery to foreign handlers. The operation unfolded exactly as Elena had predicted, with network participants throughout Fort Braxton coordinating to process false requisitions, authorize equipment transfers, and arrange transportation for stolen military resources. The scale of the theft attempt revealed the true extent of foreign penetration, involving dozens of military personnel who had been recruited or compromised over several years. Elena's surveillance captured detailed evidence of foreign handlers directing the operation through encrypted communications that revealed the international scope of the network. The stolen equipment was destined for conflict zones where American forces were actively engaged, providing enemy combatants with sophisticated technology that would be used against U.S. troops and allies. The arrest began at dawn on the following Thursday, coordinated simultaneously across multiple military installations and involving federal agents who had been positioning themselves for weeks, while Elena's investigation developed the necessary evidence. Martinez and 17 other Fort Braxton personnel were taken into custody on charges that included espionage, treason, and conspiracy to provide aid to enemy forces. Morrison watched as people he had served with for years were led away in handcuffs, their careers and lives destroyed by involvement in operations they had believed were patriotic and necessary. The psychological manipulation had been so effective that many of them still believed they were being arrested for participating in legitimate classified missions that required their discretion and dedication. Elena's debriefing revealed that the network had been responsible for equipment diversions that had directly contributed to American casualties in Afghanistan, Iraq, and Syria. Night vision devices stolen from Fort Braxton had been used to coordinate attacks against American patrols, while communication equipment had enabled enemy forces to intercept and decode American tactical communications. The investigation's success led to follow-up operations that dismantled similar networks at installations throughout the United States and allied countries, preventing future theft operations, and identifying foreign intelligence services that had been systematically compromising Western military capabilities. Elena's 18-month cover operation had provided the foundation for counterintelligence successes that protected American forces worldwide. Colonel Harrison's career survived the investigation because his cooperation with Elena's mission and his genuine ignorance of the network's activities demonstrated that he had been victimized rather than corrupted. However, the security breaches that had occurred under his command resulted in reassignment to positions that didn't involve access to classified logistics operations. Sergeant Kim's cooperation with the investigation earned him recognition for his courage in exposing foreign intelligence operations. But the psychological trauma of discovering that colleagues he trusted had been foreign agents required counseling and career transition assistance. The realization that he had been targeted for recruitment because of his access and vulnerabilities was particularly difficult to process. Elena's true identity as Major Elena Vasquez was revealed to base personnel through carefully managed briefings that explained the necessity of her deception, without compromising ongoing counterintelligence operations at other installations. Her Delta Force background and special operations experience provided credibility for the sophisticated mission she had conducted while maintaining civilian cover. Morrison's role in the investigation earned him promotion and assignment to specialized units that conducted similar counterintelligence operations at installations suspected of foreign penetration. His experience with Elena's mission provided valuable insight into recruitment techniques and operational security measures that enhanced the military's ability to detect and prevent future espionage attempts. The network's dismantlement revealed the extent to which foreign intelligence services had successfully penetrated American military logistics, stealing equipment worth millions of dollars while compromising operational security at installations that processed classified materials. The investigation demonstrated the need for enhanced security protocols and personnel screening procedures that could detect sophisticated recruitment approaches. Elena's mission concluded with commendations that recognized her successful penetration of foreign intelligence networks and her role in preventing continued theft of American military resources. However, the nature of her work required that her achievements remain classified, known only to people with clearance levels that permitted access to information about special operations conducted in denied areas. The psychological impact of the investigation affected everyone who had been involved, as they struggled to understand how colleagues and friends had been recruited by foreign intelligence services without detection by standard security protocols. The revelation that trusted personnel had been systematically compromised challenged fundamental assumptions about military security and personnel reliability. Captain Rodriguez continued her intelligence career with enhanced understanding of foreign operational techniques and communication protocols that enabled more effective detection of future penetration attempts. Her role in Elena's mission provided experience with counterintelligence operations that prepared her for assignments involving sophisticated adversaries who understood American military systems. Elena returned to classified assignments that built on the success of her Fort Braxton mission, conducting operations that required deep cover penetration of organizations suspected of threatening American national security. Her ability to maintain civilian personas while gathering intelligence made her valuable for missions that required extended undercover work in challenging environments. Morrison often reflected on his initial assessment of Sarah Chin as civilian trash, recognizing that his dismissive attitude had been both a natural response to someone who challenged established procedures and a dangerous vulnerability that foreign intelligence services could exploit. The experience taught him to question assumptions about people whose backgrounds seemed inconsistent with their capabilities. The memorial wall in Fort Braxton's main lobby included a discreet plaque that honored personnel who had died protecting classified operations. But Elena's name didn't appear because acknowledging her service would compromise her ability to conduct future missions requiring deep cover. Her contributions would remain hidden, known only to people who understood the true cost of protecting national security. Fort Braxton implemented enhanced security protocols that included regular assessments of personnel who demonstrated capabilities or knowledge that seemed inconsistent with their official backgrounds. The procedures were designed to identify both potential threats and valuable assets like Elena, who might be conducting legitimate operations under necessary cover. The investigation's success prevented future equipment diversions that would have cost American lives and compromised military operations worldwide. Elena's willingness to spend 18 months maintaining civilian cover while gathering intelligence about foreign penetration demonstrated the dedication required to protect national security in an era of sophisticated adversaries. Years later, Morrison continued to wonder about other personnel who might be conducting classified missions under civilian or military cover, protecting operations and gathering intelligence in ways that remained invisible to people without appropriate clearance levels. Elena's mission had revealed that the most important work often occurred in shadows, conducted by people whose true identities and achievements would never be publicly acknowledged. The woman they had dismissed as civilian trash had proven that some underestimations carried consequences that extended far beyond hurt feelings or damaged reputations. Elena Vasquez had demonstrated that protecting national security sometimes required deceiving the very people being protected, maintaining cover identities that allowed necessary missions to succeed while preserving the ignorance that kept classified operations secure. Elena's legacy at Fort Braxton wasn't measured in efficiency reports or performance evaluations, but in lives saved and security restored through missions that officially never happened. Her success required that she disappear from their memories as completely as she had disappeared from official records, leaving only the knowledge that somewhere, someone was continuing to fight battles that kept the world safer than most people would ever understand. The classified after-action report that documented Elena's mission became required reading for senior military leaders who needed to understand how foreign intelligence services had successfully penetrated American installations for years without detection. The document, heavily redacted for distribution beyond the highest security clearances, revealed operational techniques that challenged fundamental assumptions about personnel security and institutional protection measures. General Patricia Hawkins, commanding officer of the Special Operations Command, personally reviewed Elena's mission files to understand how a single operative had accomplished what entire intelligence divisions had failed to achieve. The success of Elena's 18-month penetration demonstrated capabilities that exceeded traditional special forces training, requiring expertise in psychological manipulation, technical surveillance, and sustained deception that few personnel possessed. Morrison's assignment to the newly created Counterintelligence Assessment Team required him to apply lessons from Elena's mission to installations across the continental United States, and overseas bases, where similar penetration attempts might be occurring. His first assignment took him to Camp Pendleton in California, where unusual equipment transfer patterns suggested possible foreign intelligence involvement in Marine Corps logistics operations. The psychological evaluation protocols developed in response to Elena's findings required all personnel with access to classified logistics systems to undergo enhanced screening procedures designed to identify vulnerability factors that foreign recruitment approaches had successfully exploited. The assessments examined financial stress, family difficulties, career frustrations, and personality traits that made individuals susceptible to manipulation by sophisticated adversaries. Captain Rodriguez received promotion to major and assignment to the Defense Intelligence Agency, where her experience with Elena's mission provided valuable insights into foreign communication protocols and operational security measures. Her new position involved coordinating counterintelligence operations with allied nations whose military installations had been compromised by networks similar to the one Elena had dismantled. Elena's techniques for maintaining civilian cover while conducting complex intelligence operations became the foundation for a specialized training program that prepared other special operations personnel for similar deep cover missions. The curriculum included instruction in corporate logistics procedures, civilian workplace behavior, and psychological methods for building credibility within target organizations without raising suspicion. The investigation's impact on military families was profound, as spouses and children struggled to understand how people they had trusted and socialized with for years had been secretly working for foreign intelligence services. The revelation that family, friends, and neighbors had been recruited by hostile nations challenged basic assumptions about community safety and personal relationships within military environments. Sergeant Kim's recovery process included participation in a support group for military personnel who had been targeted by foreign recruitment approaches, providing counseling and career guidance for people whose trust in military institutions had been severely damaged. His experience helped develop protocols for identifying and assisting other personnel who might be vulnerable to similar psychological manipulation. The financial investigation revealed that the network's operations had generated millions of dollars in revenue through stolen equipment sales, with proceeds being used to fund additional penetration attempts at installations throughout the United States and allied countries. The money trail led to sophisticated laundering operations that involve multiple countries and currencies, demonstrating the international scope of the threat. Colonel Martinez's implementation of enhanced security measures at Fort Braxton included random background investigations of personnel whose capabilities or knowledge seemed inconsistent with their official records. Designed to identify both potential threats and legitimate operatives who might be conducting classified missions under necessary cover. The procedures balanced security requirements with operational necessity. Elena's mission reports provided detailed analysis of recruitment techniques that foreign intelligence services had refined through years of successful operations against Western military personnel. The psychological approaches combined appeals to patriotism and financial incentives with carefully constructed narratives about supporting classified missions that protected American lives in denied areas. Morrison's work with the Counterintelligence Assessment Team revealed that similar networks were operating at installations worldwide, suggesting coordinated campaigns by multiple foreign intelligence services that had systematically targeted Western military logistics capabilities. The scope of the threat required international cooperation and resource sharing between allied intelligence agencies. The prosecution of network participants provided legal precedents for handling cases involving military personnel who had been psychologically manipulated into committing acts that technically constituted treason, while believing they were serving legitimate national security interests. The court proceedings balanced justice requirements with recognition that many defendants had been sophisticated victims of professional manipulation. Captain Torres, who had worked closely with Sarah Chen without recognizing her true identity, received assignment to a new position that involved training personnel to identify potential undercover operatives conducting legitimate missions. Her experience with Elena's deception provided valuable insights into the subtle behavioral indicators that might reveal hidden expertise or knowledge. Elena's success in maintaining her civilian persona while gathering critical intelligence about foreign operations demonstrated the effectiveness of long-term penetration missions that required extraordinary patience and psychological resilience. Her ability to deceive experienced military personnel for 18 months while conducting complex surveillance operations exceeded the capabilities of traditional intelligence gathering methods. The international diplomatic tensions resulting from Elena's investigation led to formal protests and accusations between countries whose intelligence services had been implicated in the network's operations. Evidence gathered through the mission provided proof of systematic efforts to compromise Western military capabilities, resulting in sanctions and restrictions on diplomatic activities. Major Rodriguez's new assignment involved coordinating with Allied intelligence services to identify and monitor similar networks operating against NATO installations throughout Europe. Elena's mission had provided the foundation for understanding foreign operational techniques and communication protocols that enabled more effective detection and prevention of future penetration attempts. Morrison's specialized training in recognizing recruitment indicators and operational security vulnerabilities made him effective at identifying installations where foreign intelligence services might be attempting to establish new networks. His assessments helped prioritize counterintelligence resources and develop targeted response strategies for different types of threats. Elena's return to active special operations involved assignments that built on her proven ability to maintain deep cover while conducting complex intelligence operations. Her success at Fort Braxton demonstrated capabilities that made her valuable for missions requiring extended penetration of organizations suspected of threatening American national security interests. The enhanced screening procedures implemented throughout the military logistics system included regular polygraph examinations and psychological assessments for personnel with access to equipment that might be attractive to foreign intelligence services. The measures were designed to identify both active threats and personnel who might be vulnerable to future recruitment approaches. Captain Kim's transition to a new career in military intelligence allowed him to apply his experience as a recruitment target to help identify other personnel who might be approached by foreign handlers. His insights into the psychological techniques used to manipulate dedicated military personnel provided valuable perspectives for developing effective countermeasures. The memorial service for American personnel who had been killed by enemy forces using stolen equipment provided emotional closure for families and colleagues who needed to understand the real-world consequences of the network's activities. Elena's mission had prevented future casualties by stopping the flow of American military technology to hostile forces in active conflict zones. Elena's techniques for building credibility within target organizations while maintaining operational security became training materials for intelligence personnel who needed to develop similar capabilities for domestic and international operations. Her success demonstrated the importance of understanding organizational culture and individual psychology when conducting sustained deception operations. The investigation's revelations about the sophistication of foreign intelligence operations led to enhanced cooperation between military and civilian law enforcement agencies that worked to identify and counter penetration attempts across all sectors of American national security infrastructure. Elena's mission provided a model for successful counterintelligence operations that could be adapted to different environments. Morrison's continuing work in counterintelligence operations required him to remain constantly aware that colleagues and personnel at every installation might be conducting classified missions under false identities, similar to Elena's civilian contractor cover. The experience had taught him that the most effective security operations often required deception of the people being protected. The psychological support programs developed for personnel affected by the investigation included counseling for military families who struggled to understand how trusted friends and neighbors had been secretly working for foreign intelligence services. The revelation challenged basic assumptions about community safety and personal relationships within military environments. Elena's mission demonstrated that protecting national security in an era of sophisticated adversaries required capabilities that exceeded traditional military training, combining special operations expertise with intelligence gathering skills and psychological resilience that few personnel possessed. Her success provided proof that deep cover operations could identify and neutralize threats that conventional security measures failed to detect. The ongoing security enhancements at military installations worldwide served as lasting testimony to Elena's contribution to protecting American military capabilities against foreign intelligence threats. Her 18-month mission had prevented continued equipment diversions that would have supported enemy operations and resulted in additional American and Allied casualties. Major Rodriguez's analysis of intercepted communications revealed that foreign intelligence services had adapted their operational techniques in response to the network's exposure, developing new recruitment approaches and communication protocols designed to avoid detection by enhanced security measures. The evolution of threats required constant adaptation of counterintelligence capabilities. Morrison's reflection on Elena's mission often focused on the professional dedication required to maintain false identities under sustained scrutiny, while conducting operations that could expose life-threatening situations if discovered. Her psychological resilience and technical expertise had enabled success in circumstances that would have overwhelmed most personnel. The international scope of similar networks revealed through Elena's investigation led to enhanced intelligence sharing agreements between allied countries that faced common threats from foreign penetration attempts. The cooperation enabled more effective identification and prevention of recruitment approaches that targeted military personnel with access to sensitive information or resources. Elena's legacy at installations beyond Fort Braxton included enhanced awareness of recruitment techniques and operational security measures that incorporated lessons learned from her successful penetration of foreign intelligence networks. Her mission had provided practical proof that sophisticated adversaries could be defeated through patient intelligence work and carefully planned counter-operations. The woman who had been dismissed as civilian trash had demonstrated that the most important contributions to national security often occurred behind carefully constructed facades, requiring expertise and dedication that few people possessed. Elena's success in deceiving experienced military personnel while gathering critical intelligence about foreign operations challenged assumptions about identity, capability, and institutional security. The classified training programs that incorporated Elena's techniques and insights prepared new generations of intelligence personnel for missions requiring deep cover operations and sustained deception. Her proven methods for building credibility within target organizations while maintaining operational security became standard curriculum for special operations and intelligence training. Morrison's specialized expertise in counterintelligence operations provided valuable capabilities for identifying and assessing personnel who might be conducting legitimate classified missions under necessary cover. His experience with Elena's deception had taught him to recognize subtle indicators that might reveal hidden expertise or knowledge that exceeded official credentials. The enhanced security protocols implemented as a result of Elena's findings required ongoing assessment and adaptation as foreign intelligence services developed new techniques for penetrating military installations and recruiting personnel with access to sensitive information. The constant evolution of threats demanded continuous improvement of detection and prevention capabilities. Elena's transformation from dismissed contractor to recognized hero within classified communities provided inspiration for other personnel who conducted dangerous missions under deep cover, knowing that their achievements might never receive public acknowledgement. Her success demonstrated that protecting national security sometimes required sacrificing personal recognition for operational effectiveness. The investigation's conclusion marked the beginning of a new era in military security awareness, where personnel understood that sophisticated adversaries were constantly seeking opportunities to exploit vulnerabilities in human relationships and institutional procedures. Elena's mission had provided education about threats that most military personnel had never imagined possible. Captain Torres's new responsibility for training personnel to identify potential undercover operatives included instruction in recognizing the subtle behavioral indicators that might reveal hidden expertise or knowledge. Elena's successful deception had demonstrated that even experienced military personnel could be fooled by well-constructed cover identities, supported by authentic credentials and consistent behavior. The ongoing diplomatic tensions resulting from Elena's revelation served as reminders that foreign intelligence operations continued to threaten American military capabilities through sophisticated penetration programs. The evidence gathered through her mission provided lasting proof of systematic efforts to compromise Western security through recruitment and manipulation of trusted personnel. Elena's return to classified assignments ensured that her proven capabilities would continue protecting American interests in environments where traditional military or intelligence operations would be ineffective. Her success at Fort Braxton had demonstrated skills that made her valuable for missions requiring sustained deception and complex intelligence gathering in hostile or denied areas. The memorial plaque that honored personnel who had died protecting classified operations served as a discreet reminder that some contributions to national security would never receive public recognition. Elena's achievements would remain hidden from people without appropriate clearance levels, known only to those who understood the true cost of protecting American military capabilities against sophisticated foreign threats. 5 years after Elena's mission concluded, The ripple effects continued to reshape military security protocols and intelligence operations across multiple theaters of operation. Morrison, now a lieutenant colonel commanding his own counterintelligence unit, stood in a briefing room at Fort Gordon reviewing case files that bore striking similarities to the network Elena had dismantled at Fort Braxton. The enemy had learned from their defeats, adapting recruitment techniques and operational security measures that reflected sophisticated understanding of American counterintelligence capabilities. The annual memorial service for personnel killed by enemy forces using diverted American equipment had grown to include representatives from allied nations whose military installations had been compromised by similar networks. Elena's investigation had revealed the international scope of foreign intelligence operations that systematically targeted Western military logistics, leading to enhanced cooperation between countries that faced common threats from sophisticated adversaries. Staff Sergeant Michael Chen, no relation to Elena's cover identity, approached Morrison with intelligence reports suggesting renewed foreign recruitment activities at installations throughout the southeastern United States. The patterns matched updated versions of techniques that Elena had documented, but with modifications designed to avoid detection by security measures implemented following her successful mission. Morrison's experience with Elena's deception had fundamentally changed his approach to personnel assessment and security evaluation. He no longer assumed that people's capabilities matched their official credentials, or that civilian contractors lacked expertise relevant to military operations. The lesson had been reinforced through subsequent encounters with personnel whose backgrounds revealed hidden depths of knowledge and experience. The Psychological Evaluation Center established at Fort Braxton in response to Elena's findings had become a model facility that provided assessment and treatment services for military personnel affected by foreign recruitment approaches. Dr. Sarah Williams, the clinical psychologist who directed the program, had developed therapeutic techniques specifically designed to help victims of sophisticated psychological manipulation recover their sense of trust and professional confidence. Elena's classified personnel file, accessible only to people with the highest security clearances, had grown to include subsequent missions that built on the success of her Fort Braxton operation. Her proven ability to maintain deep cover while conducting complex intelligence operations made her valuable for assignments that required penetration of organizations suspected of threatening American national security interests in increasingly challenging environments. Major Rodriguez, now Lieutenant Colonel Rodriguez, coordinated international counterintelligence operations from her position at NATO headquarters in Brussels. Elena's mission had provided the foundation for understanding foreign communication protocols and operational techniques that enabled more effective detection of penetration attempts at Allied military installations throughout Europe and Asia. The training programs developed from Elena's techniques had produced a new generation of intelligence personnel, capable of conducting sustained deception operations that exceeded traditional special forces capabilities. The curriculum included advanced instruction in corporate behavior, civilian workplace dynamics, and psychological methods for building credibility within target organizations, without raising suspicion among experienced professionals. Sergeant Kim's transition to civilian life had been supported by comprehensive counseling and career assistance programs designed to help military personnel who had been victimized by foreign recruitment approaches. His experience provided valuable insights for developing support services for other personnel whose trust in military institutions had been compromised by sophisticated psychological manipulation. The financial investigation's revelations about international money laundering operations had led to enhanced cooperation between military intelligence agencies and civilian law enforcement organizations that specialized in tracking complex financial networks. The collaboration enabled more effective identification of funding sources for foreign intelligence operations and disruption of revenue streams that supported recruitment activities. Colonel Martinez's security innovations at Fort Braxton had been implemented at installations worldwide, creating standardized protocols for detecting unusual patterns in personnel behavior, equipment transfers, and communication activities. The measures balanced operational security requirements with recognition that legitimate classified operations might involve activities that appeared suspicious to people without appropriate clearance levels. Elena's mission reports continued to serve as training materials for intelligence personnel who needed to understand sophisticated recruitment techniques and effective response strategies. Her success in maintaining civilian cover while gathering critical intelligence provided a model for operations that required extended penetration of organizations with advanced security awareness and counterintelligence capabilities. Morrison's unit specialized in assessing installations where unusual personnel activities or equipment transfer patterns suggested possible foreign intelligence involvement. His team's success rate in identifying legitimate threats while avoiding false positives that could compromise authorized operations reflected lessons learned from Elena's demonstration of how appearances could deceive even experienced security professionals. The prosecution precedents established through trials of network participants had influenced legal procedures for handling cases involving military personnel who committed acts that technically constituted treason while believing they were serving legitimate national security interests. The court decisions balanced justice requirements with recognition that sophisticated psychological manipulation could compromise judgment without destroying fundamental loyalty. Captain Torres had advanced to major and commanded a specialized training unit that prepared personnel to identify potential undercover operatives conducting legitimate missions within military installations. Her experience with Elena's successful deception provided practical insights into behavioral indicators that might reveal hidden expertise or knowledge inconsistent with official credentials. Elena's Delta Force tattoo, revealed during her dramatic identity disclosure, had become legendary within special operations communities as a symbol of hidden capabilities and unexpected expertise. The image served as a reminder that the most important contributions to national security often came from people whose true identities and achievements remained classified beyond public recognition or acknowledgement. The enhanced background investigation procedures implemented following Elena's mission included regular assessment of personnel whose demonstrated capabilities exceeded their official training or experience. The protocols were designed to identify both potential security threats and legitimate operatives who might be conducting classified missions under necessary cover identities. Major Kim's new career in military intelligence allowed him to apply his experience as a recruitment target to help identify other personnel who might be approached by foreign handlers using updated versions of psychological manipulation techniques. His insights contributed to development of awareness training that helped military personnel recognize and resist sophisticated recruitment approaches. The international diplomatic consequences of Elena's revelations had stabilized into formal agreements between allied nations for sharing intelligence about foreign penetration attempts and coordinating counterintelligence operations. The cooperation enabled more effective prevention of recruitment activities that targeted military personnel with access to sensitive information or critical resources. Morrison's reflection on Elena's mission often focused on the extraordinary dedication required to maintain false identities under sustained scrutiny, while conducting operations that risked exposure of life-threatening situations. Her psychological resilience and technical expertise had enabled success in circumstances that would have compromised most personnel regardless of their training or experience. The memorial wall at Fort Braxton had been expanded to include personnel who had died in classified operations that officially never occurred, providing recognition for contributions that couldn't be publicly acknowledged. Elena's name didn't appear because her continued active service required maintaining operational security, but her impact was represented through the lives saved by her successful mission. Elena's legacy within classified communities included enhanced understanding of the capabilities required for successful deep cover operations and the institutional support necessary to sustain personnel conducting dangerous missions under false identities. Her achievements demonstrated that protecting national security sometimes required sacrificing personal recognition for operational effectiveness and mission success. The ongoing evolution of foreign intelligence techniques required constant adaptation of counterintelligence capabilities and security protocols that incorporated lessons learned from Elena's successful penetration of hostile networks. The education provided by her mission continued to influence military security awareness and threat assessment procedures at installations worldwide. Lieutenant Colonel Rodriguez's coordination of international counterintelligence operations included regular assessment of recruitment techniques and communication protocols that foreign intelligence services had developed in response to enhanced security measures. The analysis enabled proactive adaptation of protection strategies that stayed ahead of evolving threats. Morrison's specialized expertise in identifying installations vulnerable to foreign penetration attempts had expanded to include assessment of civilian contractors and military personnel who might be conducting legitimate classified missions under cover identities. His experience with Elena's deception provided valuable perspectives for distinguishing between genuine threats and authorized operations. The psychological support programs established for families affected by the investigation had evolved into comprehensive services that addressed the broader challenges of military life in an era of sophisticated threats. The counseling included preparation for dealing with uncertainty about colleagues' true identities and loyalties in environments where operational security required sustained deception. Elena's techniques for building credibility within target organizations while maintaining operational security had become standard training for intelligence personnel conducting domestic and international operations. Her proven methods demonstrated the importance of understanding organizational culture and individual psychology when executing sustained deception missions. The enhanced security awareness resulting from Elena's mission had created a military culture where personnel understood that sophisticated adversaries constantly sought opportunities to exploit vulnerabilities in human relationships and institutional procedures. The education provided practical knowledge about threats that most military personnel had never imagined possible. Major Torres's responsibility for training personnel to identify potential undercover operatives included recognition that legitimate intelligence operations might involve activities that appeared suspicious to people without appropriate clearance levels. Elena's successful deception had demonstrated that even experienced military professionals could be deceived by well-constructed cover identities. The ongoing counterintelligence operations inspired by Elena's success continued to identify and dismantle foreign intelligence networks that threatened military installations worldwide. Her mission had provided the foundation for understanding operational techniques and communication protocols that enabled more effective detection and prevention of penetration attempts. Elena's transformation from dismissed civilian contractor to recognized special operations hero within classified communities provided inspiration for personnel conducting dangerous missions under deep cover. Her success demonstrated that protecting national security required capabilities that exceeded traditional military training, combining special operations expertise with intelligence gathering skills and extraordinary psychological resilience. The classified training facilities that incorporated Elena's techniques and insights prepared intelligence personnel for missions requiring sustained deception and complex operations in hostile environments. Her proven capabilities for maintaining false identities while gathering critical intelligence became essential curriculum for special operations and intelligence training programs. Morrison's understanding of the dedication required for successful deep cover operations had influenced his leadership approach and personnel development strategies. Elena's mission had demonstrated that the most effective security operations often required deception of the people being protected, maintaining operational security through carefully constructed facades that preserved mission effectiveness. The international recognition of Elena's contributions to protecting Western military capabilities against foreign intelligence threats had enhanced cooperation between allied intelligence agencies facing similar challenges. Her success provided proof that sophisticated adversaries could be defeated through patient intelligence work and carefully planned counter-operations. The woman who had been dismissed as civilian trash had proven that some underestimations carried consequences, extending far beyond personal embarrassment or damaged reputations. Elena's demonstration that appearances could deceive even experienced security professionals provided lasting education about the importance of thorough assessment and the dangers of superficial judgment in matters affecting national security. Up next, you've got two more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out.